2. Chevaliers. At the same time as Miles was interviewed by Pat, James walked through the doors of Chevaliers, the fashion house, and introduced himself to the receptionist. James didn't notice the young receptionist blush as she called the president's PA to announce James's arrival. He never noticed things like that. He was preoccupied by thoughts of his job and taking in the ambience of his lavish surroundings. He wondered how long he'd be staying at this location. He wasn't meant to start work until the following Monday, but in keeping with his attitude towards his work, he decided to introduce himself on this Friday, 3 days before his official start date. James checked his attire and adjusted his tie in the mirrors of the lift that whisked him to the 5th floor offices. On leaving the lift, he passed louver-blinded glass partitions that flanked him on either side. These were the management offices. At the end of the wide passage, it opened out into a reception area where he was asked if he'd like a seat. "Good morning, Mr. Lindsay. I'm Denise, Mr. Earl's PA. Mr. Earl will be with you shortly. He won't keep you long. Would you like a coffee or something?" James replied, "No, thank you. I'll just take a seat." James did, however, notice the louvers being opened by fingers at eye height at an office to his left, close to the reception area. He couldn't see whose eyes were looking out from behind the blind. He took a sports magazine from a rack on a table and started to flick through the pages, all the time aware he was being studied by the person behind the blinds. Suddenly, one leaf of the oak doors at the end of the reception area opened and 2 men appeared. "Hello. Sorry to keep you waiting," said the man in casual dress. "Vincent Earl, and this is John Walters. He's head of marketing worldwide. You must be James." James greeted the 2 men, and John, who was immaculately dressed, politely made his excuses and said goodbye. The meeting with Vincent Earl went very well. James already had a brief on the financial problems at Chevaliers, and these were confirmed by Vincent. Vincent couldn't add much to the information James already had, other than to say he suspected that someone at management level was manipulating stock control. He said the company had run a full internal examination of its affairs, but had uncovered nothing other than a large hole in its accounts. Whatever was going on was elaborate to say the least. He assured James that every department would fully cooperate with him, but only a small group of employees knew why James was there. "I've had a pass made for you," said Vincent. "It allows you access to every area of the company, including our bar and gym," he added with a wry smile. "I hear you're a bit of a sporting legend. We must have a game of tennis or something sometime." "Racquetball?" replied James. "Sure, any time," said Vincent. James liked Vincent instantly. There were aspects of his whole persona James envied. He was so casual, yet smart. He was a man who was genuinely comfortable with himself and also in the company of someone he'd just met. James glanced at his watch and said goodbye to Denise, the PA. He didn't need to know the time. It was just another habit born out of his shyness. As James walked past the offices towards the lift, he saw the same blind closing and made a mental note of the name at the door. "Miss A. Holman," it read. He walked to the lift without glancing across again. As he approached the lift, John Walters stepped from his office. "Good to see you," he said. "Everything okay with Vin? If I can be of any help, I'm always available, any time, day or night." "Thanks, that's very reassuring," replied James. "A drink sometime? A meal? A nightclub? Get settled and we'll talk. You're going to have a great time here, I promise." "Maybe," replied James. "Got to go. I only moved into my house on Monday, and my belongings arrived on Wednesday, so I'm pretty busy right now." "Yes, of course. You've just moved from Boston, haven't you? Good old Boston. See you around then." Something niggled James about the fact that John knew he'd just come from Boston. He dismissed the thought as petty. The guy was just being pleasant. James entered the lift and pressed the button for the ground floor. The lift stopped at 2 floors, and 1 young man and 4 young women joined him to the ground floor. On his journey through reception, there seemed to be far more young women around than when he had arrived at Chevalier's earlier that morning. The young women, mostly beautiful, made him feel nervous. James knew that his natural shyness was going to be a problem during his stay at Chevalier's. James drove his BMW 7 Series back home. His thoughts were now on getting his home sorted. He knew he would find it difficult to work if the house was in a mess. He needed order in his life to work properly. He called head office in Boston and then called the LA office to let them know that he visited Chevaliers and started to organise his home. Later that day he would go for a jog, and Saturday he would explore his neighbourhood. However, it transpired that getting his house organised took longer than James anticipated, and he fell into bed after midnight completely shattered. His jog would have to wait.